While on company tours we took in Hong Kong and China, it was clear that there's a distinct difference in business cultures between China and America. As we learned throughout the trip, these differences are based on a deeply rooted culture which has been formed by the thousands of years Chinese civilization has been around. Chinese culture has a much larger focus on the past than in America. While the United States has not existed for 250 years yet, Chinese history began over 3,000 years ago. Thus, there are deeper cultural ties and more sacred historical sites. For example, construction on the Great Wall of China began in the 7th century BC, which makes it 6.5 times older than the earliest American colony, Jamestown. The country is full of sites that are well over 1,000 years old. The country's history also consists of family dynasties and dictatorships rather than our democratic system. China thus has culturally rich imperial palaces where the royal families resided, separated from the commoners. Many of the first European American settlers were trying to get away from the European monarchs and establish a free country and escape the lords and commoners system. And since the Revolutionary War, power has been held by the people and for the people. The imperial palace was called the Forbidden City, for commoners could not even enter. It is the world's largest ancient palace and over 600 years old. The palace didn't even open to the public until 1925. The last emperor of the Qin Empire was abdicated in 1912, and nowadays it's a museum that thousands of people flock to every day. The Chinese royal family and dynasties gave way to the belief that one is ascribed their role in society and is born to do specific tasks. Individuals were unable to change social class from a commoner or peasant to a royal, and it was nearly impossible to become rich after being born a peasant. In America, hard work and a sharp mind pay off. That's why America has the American dream, and is the land of opportunity. Even though the imperial style of government is over, there is still an ascribed culture due to Mao Zedong and the Long March during China's Civil War, where members of the Communist Party fled 6,000 miles across China from the nationalists, and only 10,000 of the original 90,000 men in the army made it. It allowed the Communist Party to survive and eventually take control of China. Today, the families that can trace their family line to members that survived the march have a much higher social status and usually have a high-paying government job as part of their inheritance. Entrepreneurship is the quickest way to wealth in the U.S. We have an achieved culture where innovators lead the country and can go from homeless to millionaire in a lifespan. China is becoming much more westernized, however, and special economic zones, like Hong Kong, have made it possible to overcome the ascribed culture. America is a country that encompasses nearly every religion of the world, but is dominated by Christian beliefs, which is in 70% of the population. While in America there are many religious freedoms, the Chinese government, on the other hand, does not allow evangelical actions and soliciting one's religion. Instead, it must be private practice. China is dominated by the four main traditions: Chinese folk religion, Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism, which dominates the others. Buddhist teachers first arrived in the 3rd century BC during the Han Empire. Rather than a church in an easily seen location where an optimal amount of people can visit, Buddhist temples are in secluded, peaceful areas where meditation can occur. Early Buddhism and Christianity both stressed learning and education, but Buddhism became keen on philosophy. Many practices of Buddhism can still be applied today, such as inner peace. In China, there's a much larger focus on the collective interests of people as a group rather than individual goals. This is especially demonstrated in China's manufacturing industry. People work together to reach a common goal and are more willing to sacrifice for the betterment of the group as a whole. While in the US, individualistic goals are much more of a priority. This was definitely prominent at the manufacturing plants our group visited. At Polygroup, a plastic goods manufacturer, a sign that reminds employees to work as a group to achieve a common goal is hung over nearly every doorway. The goals of the group and company goals are all that matter, and the ideas of an individual are irrelevant. Instead of creativity and inventiveness being central ideas for an employee, discipline and, efficiency are the main goals. The Nike factory we visited is set up to where all the employees live at the factory in dorms like at a college. This encourages the most cohesiveness and decreases the chances that a person misses work and takes a piece out of the well-oiled manufacturing machine. Labor laws are substantially different in China as well. Today, it would be unheard of for a 15-year-old to work 50 hours a week in a factory. We have very protective labor laws established, while China does not even meet international standards. Workers have no union rights and often no age restrictions. This has led many American companies who use cheap manufacturing in China to improve margins, to abide by similar labor laws that are here in America. Companies like Nike have often been spurned by American media for child labor. But their cultural view on labor is different. They work to survive. Here, there is welfare and unemployment. There, the family will go hungry. Americans have a sense of entitlement that every family should experience the American dream and will not take a job that is seen as below them. The Chinese will flock to factories before sitting around doing nothing. Manufacturing factories are the easiest way for impoverished Chinese people to find a job and make a living, even if the wages are still very low and conditions poor. Chinese industrial workers have started pushing back in recent years, however, demanding better working conditions, hours, and wages. There is an expectation for the government in America to provide for the people. Individuals will rely on unemployment and Social Security instead of taking a minimum wage job to make ends meet. These labor patterns help contribute to foreign views that Americans are fat and lazy, and that the Chinese are extremely hardworking. Traveling throughout various parts of China opened our eyes to different cuisine that was extremely dissimilar to what we were used to in the US. The McDonald's in both Hong Kong and Beijing offered items on their menu that were particular to that region, such as the black squid burger with sesame seeds. Additionally, we visited Walmart, which was a completely different shopping experience than what we are accustomed to in the US. The grocery section, particularly produce, did not have as many health regulations as American Walmarts because the fish and poultry were laid out on blocks of ice and exposed to open air. We also found live frogs in tanks, horse meat, and chicken feet as we ventured throughout the store. It is easy to say there is a vast difference between American and Chinese cuisine, but we found some restaurants that showcase their attempt at westernization, such as Tim's Texas Barbecue in Beijing. This restaurant served typical Texas barbecue with all the fixings you would expect to find in the US. While these cultural differences are real and seem extreme, the trip we took has given us a solid foundation that we can build upon. Understanding Chinese history is vital to understanding their culture, but with this knowledge, conducting business in China is an achievable task.